Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryan Karava Vahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Daivim Saraswatim Chaiva Tato Jayamudirayet. Good. Welcome back. We continue in our study of Mahabharata. In the last week's class, we began a new section. New section is still in the Aranya Parva. The Pandavas are still in the forest. And the Pandavas are still having a dialogue with Markandeya, the Rishi. And this dialogue actually extends, I forget if it's over 100 chapters. It's a very extended, not 100 chapters, dozens of chapters, the dialogue with Markandeya. And in our last class, we began a new section of that dialogue, a dialogue in which there's a discussion. Markandeya is relating, he's telling about a dialogue between a pious Brahmana and a Vyadha. I'll tell you what is Vyadha in just a moment. This section is often called Vyadha Gita. The word Gita, you all know the literal meaning is song, but it comes to mean a section from a larger scripture which is excerpted for independent study. There are many Gitas in the Mahabharata, the most famous of which is the Bhagavad Gita. But here we are studying another section often excerpted for independent study, this one called Vyadha Gita. Now, in a previous class, when we introduced this section, I defined Vyadha as hunter. And that's the conventional translation. Vyadha is hunter. It comes from the dhatu, the root vyad. Vyad is to pierce. So one who pierces, as with arrows, is a Vyadha. But we're going to see in today's class that this Vyadha is not involved in any kind of hunting activities at all. He is, however, involved in selling the meat that comes from hunting. And of course, to sell the meat, you have to chop it up into parcels that people would buy for the sake of consumption. So this is another meaning for Vyadha, not the common meaning, but the appropriate meaning here is someone who prepares meat for sale. We call such a person a butcher. So even though Vyadha, the dictionary meaning of Vyadha is indeed hunter, in this context it would be much more accurate to describe him he's not a hunter, he is a butcher. And that actually works out to be a good, even true to the Sanskrit, to pierce, to cut, what do butchers do? So he's involved in that activity. So Vyadha here means butcher. And we'll come to our Vyadha, our butcher, in just a few minutes. Just to recall the story which introduced all of this, Markandeya tells the story of this Brahmana, pious Brahmana. His name was Kaushika. Kaushika is sitting at the foot of a tree reciting the Vedas. So we were chanting Durga and Medha Suktam earlier. So you can imagine this Brahmana sitting at the foot of a tree, reciting those suktas. And as he's sitting underneath the tree, up in the tree is a crane. The Sanskrit word, balaka. Crane, a bird, not a mechanical thing. The bird, who's called crane, is sitting up in a tree, and birds poop. That's the right word. And he's sitting underneath the bird, and he gets covered by this excrement, and he gets really angry. Here he is sitting underneath the tree, engaged in a sacred activity, and this bird defiles him. He looks up at the tree with anger in his eyes, and the anger in his eyes is not just metaphorical, it becomes physical, because he's through his tapas, through his spiritual austerities, this Kaushika Brahmana has gained some kind of siddhi, some kind of power. So he glares at the bird with anger. The bird is, the current word is toast. The bird is, that's the word people use. He's toast. The bird falls dead on the ground. Of course, now Kaushika feels embarrassed. He lives a pious life, but he was overcome by his anger. He recognizes that as a problem and what to do. In the meanwhile, he gets hungry, and he goes to a nearby town to collect some bhiksha, some alms. He goes to the house of a woman, and the woman is busy taking care of her husband. She tells the Brahmana, wait just a minute, I'll come back and take care of you in just a minute. And she returns to taking care of her husband. A little while later, she returns to the Brahmana, and he is angry. Why is he angry? He said, hey, you told me to wait, and then you made me wait here for all this time. You didn't give me the freedom to go collecting alms from other places. You made me stay here and wait. What right have you to do that? She said, I'm taking care of my husband. And he said, oh, you think your husband is more important than a Brahmana like me? A little bit of pride, do you think? Yes. And her response is staggering. That's where we left off in the story. He said, how can you think your husband is more important than a Brahmana like me? She had explained that for her, you remember this discussion, for her husband was her Ishta Devata, her chosen form of God that she worships. So by serving her husband, she's worshiping God. That's in her mind. We call this pativrata. Remember that discussion? So that was in her mind. This Brahmana clearly didn't understand. He got angry. He challenged the woman. And the woman replied, we saw this verse in the last class, but we'll just pick up the thread here. She replied, she said, Balaka hi tvaya dagdha, that bird that you killed, roshat, out of anger, vidita mama, I know about that. Hey, she's a housewife sitting in home in a town maybe a kilometer or two away from the tree where he was meditating. How would she know that he had killed this bird out of anger? So he's not the only one that has siddhis. He has a siddhi to kill the bird with his mind. She also had a siddhi to know what was going on underneath that tree. How did he acquire his siddhi? Through his devotional practices. How did she acquire her siddhi? Through her devotional practices. What were her devotional practices? Taking care of her husband was her devotional practice. She gains the siddhi. She says, I know that. You killed that bird. And yaha krodha modha tyajati, one who gives up krodha and moha, one who is out of anger and delusion, tam devaha brahmanam viduhu, the gods say, such a person is a true Brahmana. Notice what she's doing here, and we'll see this in the coming verses. She's actually turned the tables on the Brahmana. She is now criticizing, the Brahmana was criticizing her for not responding more quickly. Now she is criticizing the Brahmana for not being a very good Brahmana. And that's, he says, Devaha viduhu, the gods know, the gods say, that tam brahmanam, somebody who is a Brahmana, is someone who is yah krodha moha tyajati, one who has outgrown anger and delusion. Clearly our Brahmana, named Kaushika, has not outgrown anger and delusion. And the housewife continues her lecture. She goes on lecturing. this Brahmana, she says, Jitendriyo dharma paraha, Jitendriyo dharma para, Swadhyaya nirata shuchihi, Swadhyaya nirata Kama krodhau vishayasya, Kama krodhau vishay, Tam deva brahmanam viduhu, Tam deva brahmanam viduhu. Start with that last line. It repeats from the prior verse, right? Devaha, the gods, viduhu, they think, they say that tam brahmanam, such a person is a true brahmana. She's very clever, by the way. Notice she's not saying, in my opinion, you're not a very good brahmana. She's smart. She says, hey, devaha viduhu, even the gods say, tam brahmanam, such a person is a brahmana. What kind of person is a brahmana? Look at the second line. Swadhyaya nirataha. Nirata, one who is committed to what? Swadhyaya, to one's own study, in this case the Vedic recitation. Now indeed, our Brahmana, Kaushika, is indeed Swadhyaya Nirata. He is committed to Vedic study. What was he doing underneath the tree? Swadhyaya. So no problem. Also, the gods say that a true Brahmana is Shuchihi, pure. Well, this Brahmana takes his bath and does his puja every morning, so he's Shuchi, he has that quality. But there are some qualities he doesn't have. Qualities like what? In the first line, Jitendriyaha. A true Brahmana is one whose indriyas, whose senses are jita, conquered, controlled. His senses should be conquered or controlled. His senses were clearly not conquered or under his control. When he got so angry, he couldn't restrain his anger. His eyesight went to that bird. The bird was burnt by his power of his mind through his eyesight. Clearly, he is not jita indriyaha. He has not conquered his senses. Also, she says, quoting the gods, that a true Brahmana is dharma paraha. A true Brahmana is one whose para, whose focus, whose absolute commitment in life is to dharma. Killing critters is not dharma. Killing any kind of killing. Ahimsa, paramo dharma. Ahimsa is the main principle of dharma. By the way, that phrase is going to be quoted in several more verses. We'll see that phrase comes in the Mahabharata maybe a half a dozen times. It comes in this chapter, so we'll come to that very shortly. So this Brahmana does not seem to be dharma paraha, because he's practicing himsa, harm. And in the third line, also, kama krodhau vishay yasya. Yasya tam brahmanam. One is a true Brahmana, yasya, for whom vashay. Two things are under control. What two things are under control? Kama and krodha. Kama, desire. Krodha, anger. What was his kama? His desire that he should remain in a state of purity while he is reciting the Vedas. That was a desire, kama. And krodha, well, we discussed that already. So he is clearly not in control of kama, krodha. Therefore, she criticizes him by saying that the gods would not consider you to be a good Brahmana. And she continues, she's lecturing him. Very bold. Bhavanapi cha dharmagnaha, bhavanapi cha dharmag, swadhyaya nirata shuchihi, swadhyaya nirata, natu tatvena bhagavan, natu tatvena, dharman vetsiti me matihi, dharman vetsiti. Bhavanapi dharmagnaha. She said, Bhavan, you, is a formal you, a very respectful form of the word you. Bhavan api dharmagnya. She admits you know what is dharma. Dharma, jnaha means knower. You are a knower of dharma. She said, you seem to know what is dharma. Notice the prior verse had the word dharma paraha, one who is committed to dharma. This verse says dharma jnaha. He knows what is dharma, but he's not committed to dharma, which means it hasn't gone in. He hasn't assimilated those teachings of dharma. And she observes this. She says, you may know what is dharma, but you don't seem to have assimilated those teachings. She admits, swadhyaya nirataha. She says, you indeed are committed to Vedic study. Shuchihi, you indeed practice all the rituals of purity that Brahmanas practice. But, in the next line, but, na tattvena Bhagavan, O Lord, tattvena, in reality, na vepsi dharman. You do not seem to know dharma in reality. Na vepsi, you do not know dharman, dharma, in a plural number. You do not know dharma tattvena properly. Me matihi. This is my opinion. She says, she is really bold. In my opinion, you do not know dharma properly. You know dharma, but you don't practice it properly. And then she continues to lecture him, and she gives him some advice now. What advice does she give? Mitalayam vasan vyadaha, mitalayam vasan vyadaha, sate dharman pravakshati, sate dharman pravakshati, tatra gacchasva bhadram te, tatra gacchasva dharma, yatha kamam dvijottama, yatha kamam dvijottama. So here's her advice. She says, there is a vasan vyadha. Vyadha, here's our, I've translated here hunter, but I think based on what we discussed before, it would be better to translate it as butcher. And when we meet him shortly, you'll see why that butcher is a proper translation. She says, Vyadha, there is a butcher who, vasan, who dwells where? Mitalayam, in the city of Mitala. Saha, he, that butcher, te, unto you, dharman pravakshati. He can teach you all about dharma. How bold is she? Actually, she's smart enough. She knows that she's not going to teach him about dharma. So she tries a little bit. But then she says, there is this Vyadha, this butcher who lives in Mitala, and he, te, unto you, dharman pravakshati. He can teach you dharma. Tatra gacchasva. You can go there. In fact, it's a command. Gacchasva. Chalo. Go. And in the same Hindi informal sense, not chaliye. Chalo. She says, you can go there, tatra, to Mitala, bhadram te, and it will be for your benefit. Te bhadram, it'll be a blessing for you if you go there. Yatha kamam, if you feel like it. If you want to, yatha kamam, if you are inclined to go there, to Mitala, to meet the Vyadha, he will teach you dharma, dvijottama, and she's using some very formal language, O highest of twice-borns, dvijottama, O Brahmana, you can go there and meet the Vyadha. Now, it would be interesting to see what is the Brahmana's response to all of this. You'll be surprised. Remember that he was full of pride and arrogance before. She criticized this lady for being more committed to her husband than to caring for Brahmanas. He was full of pride and arrogance. But surprisingly, he was able to hear what she said, and you'll see in the next verse, he recognizes that he has a problem with anger, that he has a problem with assimilation of dharma, and looks like she helped him get rid of his pride and anger. You'll see. Brahmana uvacha, Brahmana Pritosmi tava bhadram te, Pritosmi tava Gata krodhascha shobhane, Gata krodhascha upalambastvaya hyukto, upalambastvaya Mama nishreyasam param, Mama nishreyas. He says, Pritaha asmi, I am pleased. Tava bhadram te, with this blessing you have given me. Te, unto me. Bhadram, this blessing, tava, of you. You have given me this blessing. Gataha krodaha, my anger is gone. Shobhane, O lady, you have helped me. I am grateful to you. And this is surprising. Tvaya hi uktaha, end of the third line. Uktaha, what was uttered tvaya, by you. What was uttered by you? Upalambaha, criticism. This criticism uttered by you, mama param nishreyasam, is conducive to my ultimate param nishreyasam, welfare. The criticism you have given me is conducive to my ultimate benefit. He recognizes he has a problem with krodha. Remember when we saw that in a verse in the last class, when he killed the bird, he felt guilty about that. He did. He knew he has a problem. He knows he has a problem with anger. He's not able to conquer this anger. And this lady has just given him the key to solving his problem with anger. What is that key? Go to Mithila and see this Vyadha butcher. So he is very grateful on that account. And concluding this chapter, Markandeya vacha, Markandeya vacha, Taya visrishto nirgamya, Taya visrishto Swameva bhavanam yayao, Swameva Vinandan sadvajotmanam, sanindam sadvajotman, kaushiko narasattama, kaushiko Taya visrishtaha, being released by her, which means that she gave him freedom to leave. She said, you can go now. Taya visrishtaha, dismissed by her, nirgamya, he left. And what did he do? Yayao, he went, swameva bhavanam, he went to his own home, wherever that was. And what did he do there? Sahadvijaha, that twice born, that Brahmana, vinandan atmanam. He was vinandan, criticizing Atmanam, himself. He was criticizing himself. He recognized his problem with anger, and she pointed out his problem with anger, and so now he's really focused on his problem with anger, and he's thinking about it. He feels bad about himself. Vinandan Atmanam, criticizing himself. Who was that? Kaushikaha, the Brahmana named Kaushika. Narasattama is Markandeya addressing Yudhishthira. So this whole story is narrated by Markandeya to Yudhishthira. O best of men, Markandeya addresses Yudhishthira, and with that verse we come to the end of this chapter. This chapter is the first chapter of this Vyadha Gita, this section of the Aranya Parva, which has this dialogue between the Brahmana and the Vyadha. So we can come now to the next. There we go. The next of the chapters. Actually, this is a condensation of 2 chapters. I think this dialogue goes on, for 8 or 9 chapters. I forget the exact number, something like that. This Vyadha Gita, this dialogue between the Brahmana and the butcher, goes on for maybe 8, 9 chapters. So we'll see the next 2 chapters here in this section. Markandeya uvacha, Markandeya iti sanchintya manasa, iti sanchintya shraddhadhana striyavachaha, shraddhadhana samprataste samitalam, samprataste kautuhala samanvitaha, kautuhalam samanvitaha. Iti sanchintya, thinking over, manasa, with his mind, thinking about what? Striya vachaha, the words of that lady. What that lady had told him, striyaha vachaha, thinking about her words, iti, thus, shraddhadhanaha, that the Brahmana here is described as having faith or trust. So he is shraddhadhana, he trusts her. Remember, she gave him the advice to go to Mithila. If he didn't have faith and trust in her, he would just ignore that advice. But because he is shraddhadhana, because he has faith in her words, what does he do? Samprataste saha, he, samprataste, he leaves, he sets out. He sets out for where? Mithilam. He goes to Mithila. And how is he feeling? Kautuhala samanvitaha. He is samanvita, filled with kautuhala, curiosity, interest, expectation. He really wants to meet this Vyadha because he really wants to find out how to conquer his anger. Now, of course, he doesn't really know who this Vyadha is. My guess is that he's thinking Vyadha is a hunter. This is my conjecture, by the way, based on the study of this chapter. Vyadha usually means hunter. So being a hunter in those days was a noble thing. By the way, we should point out that in ancient times, plenty of people ate meat, as even in modern times, plenty of people eat meat. Hinduism, I'd share with you just a quick observation. My guru, Puja Swami Tadatmananda, used to observe, he said, Hinduism is not a diet plan. So, vegetarianism is not a dietary rule for the religion. Some religions have dietary rules, right? Muslims shouldn't eat pork. Jews shouldn't eat pork, etc. There's dietary rules. This is not a dietary rule for Hindus. Rather, it is an instance of our value for ahimsa. Ahimsa means not causing harm. One way you cannot cause harm is don't kill animals. Another way you cannot cause harm is don't eat animals. Because if you eat animals, you create a demand for killing animals. It makes sense. So anyway, we'll talk about this a little more. The topic of ahimsa comes in a very prominent way in this chapter. So our Brahmana, Kaushika, thinks he's going to meet a hunter, and hunters were respected people. So he thinks he's going to see a hunter, but then I skipped a verse. Then, what happens when he reaches Mithila and sees the Vyadha? He's in for a shock. Why is he in for a shock? Apashyat tatra gatva tam, apashyat tatra gatva, suna madhye vyavastitam, suna madhye vyavastitam, marga mahi shamhamsani, marga mahi shamhamsani, vikrinantam tapaswinam, vikrinantam. Tatra gatva, having gone there to Ayodhya, apashyat tam, the Brahmana apashyat saw tam, he saw the Vyadha. So he was thinking he was going to meet a hunter, but he was very surprised when he saw the Vyadha, who was Vyavastatam, who was standing where? Suna madhye, in the middle of a suna, slaughterhouse, butcher's shop. Dictionary definition will be slaughterhouse. I think the context is, you've probably, I'm squinting because it's not very pleasant. In a little village where they got the shops on the street, and one of those shops is a butcher shop, it's got pieces of animals hanging there, and it's pretty, at least to me, it's pretty disgusting. And I think also to our Brahmana, it was pretty disgusting. That's the scene. So look at this. Our Brahmana thought he was going to meet a hunter, and what he finds is a butcher, someone who is chopping up all these animals, and what is this fellow doing? He, in the last line, vikrinantam, he is selling. The Vyadha is vikrinantam, selling what? He's selling mamsani, different kinds of meat. What kind of meat? This is even described. Marga means meat of a mriga, deer. And mahisha means the meat of a mahisha, a buffalo. So you get that description. He's selling chopped up bits of deer and buffalo. So the Brahmana was shocked to see it's not a hunter at all, it's this lowly butcher. I should mention that in terms, I mentioned also in the meditation session that the castes used to be very rigid in ancient times. So hunters were most likely kshatriyas. Butchers were almost invariably shudras. So he was of the lowest caste, this Vyadha. So he was a butcher, he wasn't a hunter. On the other hand, the Brahmana recognizes, last word, tapasvinam. He could tell that this butcher was very committed to religious austerities, tapasvinam. He was very pious, he was very, shall we use the word, spiritually mature. Somehow, this Brahmana was able to recognize about this butcher that he was not an ordinary butcher. In fact, oftentimes the butcher is referred to not merely as Vyadha, but Dharma Vyadha, as a righteous butcher. That's what it means. Dharma Vyadha means righteous butcher. So, the Brahmana meets the butcher, and Vyadha vacha, Vyadha abhivadaye tva bhagavan, abhivadaye tva bhagavan, swagatam te dvijottama, swagatam te ekapatnya yaruktosi, ekapatnya yarukto, gachat Tvam mitilamiti, gachat tvam mitila. So the Vyadha sees the Brahmana and says, Abhivadaye tva Bhagavan. Bhagavan, O Lord, Abhivadaye tva, I greet you. Swagatam te, welcome to you. Dvajotama, O best of twice-borns, O best of Brahmanas, welcome to you. Yat uktaha asi, that which you were told, ekapatnya, by somebody's wife. What were you told by somebody's wife? Gachatvam mitalam iti. Somebody's wife told you that you should come to Mitala. Amazing. Everyone seems to have a siddhi. The Brahmana has the siddhi of turning the bird into toast. The wife had the siddhi of knowing that he burnt the bird when he was sitting underneath the tree. And even his butcher has a siddhi. He somehow knew that lady sent him to Mitala. Don't ask me how, except to say that they all had spiritual practice, and presumably their spiritual practice led them all to acquire some kind of siddhi. So, what is the Brahmana's response? Brahmano vacha, Brahmana. Karmai tadvaina sadrisham, karmai tadvaina bhavata pratibhati me, bhavata pratibha anutapye brisham tata, anutapye brisham tava ghorena karmana, tava ghorena karmana. So this is the Brahmana's initial response. He says, Etat karma, this karma. Karma here means work. What work? Being a butcher. Etat karma, this work of being a butcher, vai, indeed, nasadrisham. It is not suitable, bhavataha, for you. This work of being a butcher does not seem to suit you. Nasadrisham bhavataha, doesn't suit you. Pratibhati me, it appears so to me. Me, to me, pratibhati, it seems that this work does not suit you. Why does it not suit him? He's a tapaswin, he's a very pious, spiritual person, and what is his work? Chopping up deer and buffaloes. So the Brahmana continues to say, Anutapye brasham tata. Tata, O dear one. Brasham anutapye. He says, this bothers me a lot. Brasham, a lot. Anutapye, this bothers me a lot. What bothers me a lot? What bothers him a lot? Tava ghorena karmana. I am bothered a lot by what? Tava karmena, by your action, by your work. What kind of work? Ghorena karma. Ghora, this frightening, fearful, disgusting work that you do bothers me a lot. I find that choice of word interesting. Ghorena karmana. In chapter 3, when in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, I'm switching now, in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, fight, you have to do your duty. And the beginning of chapter 3, Arjuna complains, Tattim karmani ghore mamniro jayasi, Keshava. Arjuna complains, why are you telling me to do this ghora karma, this terrible, frightening, fearful act? For Arjuna, it was to fight against his family members. The same word used, ghora karma, in both cases. So, remember back in the context of the Bhagavad Gita, it really was Arjuna's responsibility, it was his duty, it was his dharma to do that ghora karma, to do that frightening work of fighting the battle. Remember that the battle was a dharma yuddha. It was a battle that if they don't fight the battle, the outcome would be even worse. even more harm would be caused by not fighting the battle than by fighting the battle. Therefore, it was Arjuna's responsibility, even though it was ghora karma, even though it was horrible, frightening deeds to be engaged in, it indeed was Arjuna's responsibility. So here, the Brahmana is using that same language on the Vyadha, the butcher. The Brahmana says, this is ghora karma. This is frightening, fearful, and I'll add the word disgusting karma. What would be the Vyadha's, the butcher's response? Vyadha vacha, kulo chitamidam karma, kulo chitamidam, pitrapaitramaham mamaha, pitrapaitramaham mama, vartamanasya me dharme, vartamanasya me, swemanyum makrita dvaja, swemanyum makrita. Good. Idam karma, the Vyadha, the butcher replies to the Brahmana, idam karma, this work. What is the work? Chopping up animals. He says, this work is the work of mama pitra paitamaham. This is the work that was done by my father and by his father. This work is done by my father and my grandfather. This work, idam karma, is kula uchitam. This is a work that is uchita, is proper or appropriate for mama kula, my family, my lineage. You'll recall, of course, in ancient times, your profession was determined almost entirely by the family you were born into. That was, in fact, we lose sight of the fact that it's only in the last 200 or 300 years that people have the freedom to choose their profession. Even, and this nice example, even in medieval Europe, if you were born into a family of barrel makers, what would be your job? If your father was a barrel maker and your grandfather was a barrel maker, what would be your job? Make barrels. What was the family name? Cooper. The European surname, Cooper, is a family of barrel makers. If your father was a blacksmith and your grandfather was a blacksmith, if you're born into that family, can you decide, I don't want to be a blacksmith? You can't decide. What is your job? You become a blacksmith. What was your family name? Smith. This is European culture just 400 or 500 years ago. So in India, much more so. So in his family tradition was that of butchers. His father was a butcher. His grandfather was a butcher. Go back many, many, many generations of butchers. He is a butcher. So this is kula uchitam. This is our family tradition. We are all butchers. Anything wrong with that? Nothing wrong with it. Did he have a choice? Being born into a family of butchers, he had no choice. Of course he'll become a butcher. And then he explains to the Vyadha, he says, Dvija, O twice born, Vartamanasya me dharme sway. Sway dharme. With regard to my responsibility, Vartamanasya, my current responsibility, with regard to my present duty. My duty is what? Chop up animals. With regard to that, he asks Dvija, O Brahmana, Ma kritaha manyum. Please don't be angry. Ma manyum kritaha. Please don't be angry with me. I'm merely doing my duty, which is what it is. And he's going to explain it. I'm glad I wasn't sure we'd have time. We come to this next verse. Very powerful, this next verse. And this is where we get into some more discussion. Before we do, just a quick comment on his prior verse. We understand that definition of swadharma, that really is the theme of this chapter. The theme of this chapter is, what is swadharma? What is your personal responsibility? And the very fact that we have that term, swadharma, recognizes the fact that your personal responsibility is unique. What is right for you is not necessarily right for anyone else. This is unique, I think, in this teaching, the recognition of something called swadharma, personal responsibility, individual responsibility. It's an acknowledgement that your individual responsibilities are unique to you. What is right for somebody else is not necessarily right for you. What is right for you is not necessarily right for someone else. Look at Arjuna's situation, to return to the Bhagavad Gita. He was, first of all, he was a kshatriya. Secondly, he was not just a kshatriya, but he was incredibly well-trained and powerful. And if we reflect on the whole story of the Mahabharata, it's absolutely clear that if Arjuna failed to fight in that Mahabharata war, the Pandavas would absolutely have lost. Arjuna was crucial to their ability to win the war. And therefore, since it was a dharma yuddha, since it was a righteous war, which means a war in which not fighting the war would be worse than fighting the war, it would have a worse outcome than fighting war, and since Arjuna's participation was crucial in that war, we say that it was Arjuna's swadharma to fight that war. Now, what did that entail? It meant killing his beloved family members. It included killing Bhishma. Arjuna had to kill Bhishma. What a horrible thing. His great uncle, no one he loved in life more than Bhishma. Arjuna had to kill him. And if you say, that is ghora karma. That is horrible, frightening, disgusting karma. But for Arjuna, it was indeed his swadharma. Thank goodness it's not your swadharma and my swadharma to do something like that. But this is the point, is that what was Arjuna's responsibility was unique to him and his situation. What is the butcher's responsibility, the Vyadha's responsibility, is unique to him and his situation. Who is he? Born in a family of butchers, with a wife and family to take care of. Born into a family of butchers with a wife and family to take care of, what should he do? He should chop up animals. That's what he has to do. He has no choice. There's no other way for him to take care of his family. Therefore, for the Vyadha, it was swadharma. Now finally, what about for you? What is swadharma for you? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on what? Thousands of factors. It depends on your family, depends on your circumstances, depends on your background, depends on your family, depends on your training, depends on any number of factors. Taking all of those factors into account, which is not a small thing to do, taking all of those factors into account, you have it is your task. Final comment here, and then we'll move on. Who gets to figure out what is your swadharma? So who is it that decides that the Vyadha's responsibility is to be a butcher and support his family? He has to figure that out, right? The Vyadha has to come to an understanding that this is my Swadharma, this is my responsibility. Who has to understand that his responsibility is to fight the war? Arjuna has to understand that it's his responsibility to fight the war. Who has to understand what is your responsibility in life? You. No one else. Now, Arjuna took Sri Krishna's help. Arjuna's situation was very complicated, very difficult, so he took Sri Krishna's help in figuring out what was his Swadharma. The Vyadha had a very simple situation. Arjuna's situation, very complex. The Vyadha's situation, very simple. How simple is that? You're born to a family of butchers. You have a wife and children to take care of. You better go on chopping up and selling animals. Very simple. So if you have a simple life, you may not need guidance. Arjuna was in a really complex situation. He sought Sri Krishna's guidance. So what does that tell you? If you have a very simple life, it should be pretty obvious to you. What is your dharma? Chances are your life is not so simple as the Vyadha. Your life is probably more complex. If your life is complex, if you are unable to really see clearly, you might be able to see very clearly what is your Swadharma, then you know. But if it's not clear to you, you should do what Arjuna did. He sought advice. Anyway, this is a little bit on Swadharma. Now, with that in mind, we continue. Dhatra tu vihitam purvam, dhatra tu vihitam, karma swam palayam yaham, karma swam palayam, kritam anveti kartaram, kritam anveti, pura karma dvajotama, pura karma dvajotama. Prior verse, he's talking about idam karma, this work I have to do, which has been done by my family. And now he talks further about about his work as a butcher. The Vyadha says, this work I do as a butcher, purvam, long ago, this work was vihitam. It was established. It was ordained. Ordained by whom? Dhatra. By the Dhata. Dhata means the one who establishes everything. It means Ishvara. Specifically, it means Ishvara as karma pala data. So he says, this work, swam karma, my own work, the work of being a butcher, palayami, aham, I, palayami, I am carrying out, swam karma, my own work, which was purvam, long ago, vihitam, determined, ordained. By whom? Dhatra, by Ishvara. I'll give you a little background. We'll see many chapters in the future. Not many, several chapters in the future. We're going to learn a little bit more about the Vyadha. We're going to learn that in his prior life he was a Brahmana. And he was actually teaching a king. He was giving some instruction to a king. The king invited him to go hunting. Generally, Brahmanas don't go hunting, but the king invites you. It's like, suppose Obama invited you to go to do something, and you don't say, well, I don't know. So anyway, the king invited this Brahmana to go hunting, and he said, okay. And as they're hunting, the king shoots some arrows and kills a deer, and then I suppose this Brahmana is not very skillful. Hunting is not his thing. He shoots an arrow. He doesn't kill a deer. He kills a rishi. We'll see this story later. So, not very skillful anyway, the story goes. He's now cursed by that rishi to be a Shudra, lowest caste, and a butcher in his next life. And that's the story. Now, that being so, the fact that he was born as a butcher in this life, did he have any choice? He was, by his prior actions, his karma, given by Ishvara. We had this long discussion about the doctrine of karma. We don't need to go back over it. But remember that we understand Ishvara to be the karma paladata, the giver of the fruits of actions. We commit our actions, our deeds, good and bad. We receive the results of those actions from Ishvara in the form of the laws of nature, including the law of karma. Ishvara's intelligence is in this world in the form of the laws of nature and the laws of karma. So this is just how we understand Ishvara to be the giver of the fruits of our actions, karma paladata, and according to that, this person was born a butcher, choicelessly born to be a butcher. Not only choicelessly, but according to Ishvara's order. In fact, the term Ishvara's order, that was a favorite expression of Puja Swami Dayananda, most of you know. That's actually stated in the second half of this verse. He says, Kritam anveti kartaram pura karma. Dvajotama, O best of Brahmanas, O best of twice-borns. Kritam karma, this work I'm doing, Pura, which was ordained long ago, is anveti kartaram. It is in keeping with kartaram. It's in keeping with Ishvara's order. Pura kartaram. It is in keeping with Ishvara's order. Puja Swamiji used this expression to describe the inevitability of whatever happens in life. Whatever happens in life based on our past karmas, it's a given. Now, please don't make the mistake, you won't make the mistake, please don't make the mistake of thinking everything is preordained in life. We had a long discussion several chapters back about that. We said whatever your past karmas determine, absolutely you have no choice over, but you still have choice over what you do today. You always have choice over what you do in the present moment. So we absolutely reject any kind of determinism, any kind of predestination. We reject all of that. Why? You have free will to act with complete freedom in the present moment. But what's referred to here is Ishvara's order according to which this fellow was born as a butcher. That is part of not just anyone's order, that's part of Ishvara's order. If it's part of Ishvara's order, shouldn't we respect it? How about this? If we all obey laws, most of the time. Suppose there is a law laid down by your local library, and the law says you must return this book in 2 weeks. Did you ever break that law? Maybe. So, but you think, okay, it's just the library's law. So it's not such a big thing. You have some respect for the library's law, but less. Suppose there's another law like the speed limit laws. So you have a little bit more respect for those laws because the consequences are a little bit more. And so it really depends. You have less respect for the library's laws, more respect for municipal laws. How about for Ishvara's laws? Now you get it. So this Vyadha was born a butcher according to whose laws? Ishvara's laws. Should we not respect those laws? To the utmost, we should respect those laws. That's what Pujya Swamiji called Ishvara's order. We must respect, acknowledge, and accept Ishvara's order. Now, look at this. To respect Ishvara's order means that this person born as a butcher and who continues to work as a butcher is actually acting according to Ishvara's order. Isn't that the most noble thing? And isn't that worthy of respect regardless of what he's doing? There's a problem. I don't think the problem is here, but some people have the problem that you think, oh, if they're doing lowly work, they must be a loser. How about the fellow who comes on a truck once a week to pick up your trash? Right? The truck goes down your road. This fellow jumps off of the truck. He gets your bin of garbage and he throws it in the truck. Okay, and you might think, what kind of job is that? And I don't think this will happen, but for some people, you make a judgment. What a lowly person. What a loser. But wait a minute. Suppose, due to life circumstances, we talked about swadharma before? Suppose this fellow did not have the opportunity for higher education. Suppose this fellow has a wife and children to take care of. And suppose this work probably pays better than many other jobs. And he's fulfilling his swadharma. And who are we to judge that that's lowly in any sense of the word? If he's fulfilling his swadharma, he's conforming to Ishvara's order. It's what Ishvara has ordained. Who are we to judge? And with that statement in mind, who are we to judge, if you'll allow me just to make a comment on this terrible tragedy that happened in Orlando, Florida last week, where someone who may have had some mental health problems, we don't know. He went into a nightclub which was populated almost entirely by gay people, homosexual people, and he proceeded to kill 49 people. Mind-boggling. He should kill 49 people. Why did he kill them? In his view, we can only presume that he judged them that they were gay. And because they were gay, they didn't deserve to live. Now, being gay, and I have to tell you, being gay is not a matter of choice. There's a ton of science about this. If you have any doubt, please educate yourself. One doesn't become gay. One doesn't choose to be gay. It is not a lifestyle. It is not a choice. Somebody is born that way or wired that way. Again, if you disagree with that statement, please educate yourself. There's a ton of science and research to establish this. So, if that's so, that one doesn't choose to be gay, one is born gay, then being born means due to your karma. And karma means according to Ishvara's order. Then someone who is gay according to Ishvara's order. Who are we to judge? It's part of Ishvara's order. How can we judge? Remember the scenario we just discussed. You have a little bit of respect for a library's laws. You have more respect for municipal laws. What about some respect for Ishvara's laws? Someone who's born gay is born that way according to Ishvara's laws. Shouldn't we respect that and honor that without any kind of judgment whatsoever? So, to tie this up, the Vyadha, our butcher, was born into that family according to the laws of karma. The laws of karma are Ishvara's order. That's what the first line says. Dhatra vihitam, what is ordained by Ishvara. Laws of karma are whose laws? The laws of the library belong to the library. The laws of a municipality belong to the municipality. The laws of karma are whose laws? Ishvara's laws. So for the Vyadha, being born to a family of butchers, fulfilling his swadharma, absolutely honorable and respectable. Someone who is born gay, absolutely respectable, honorable. There's no wiggle room here for any kind of negative judgment. If you understand it as being Ishvara's order, there's absolutely no room for negative judgment. And this is the important message of this verse and of the message of Swadharma. There's much more to be seen on this topic. We'll see that when we meet next time. A couple of quick announcements. Tomorrow, Sunday, we have our satsang every week at 6:15. I think the weather will be very nice, so we'll probably sit out in the garden for our question-answer session at 6:15. Please join us. The library will be open after class, and we'll conclude with our prayers. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavit Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.